Hello! We are back with the Conference League predictions. I'm cutting this one a tad bit close. In fact, I'm uploading this video the day the Conference League round of 16 begins, as they have pushed up one of the matches, Lazio versus Alkmaar, today. But the other matches are happening on Thursday, along with the second leg fixtures, and today I'm going to be sharing with you all of my round of 16 predictions on who I think will advance to the quarterfinals. Now, before all this, we had the playoff round, which consisted of third place of each Europa League group versus second place of every Conference League group. And in those predictions, I got 6 out of 8 correct. And considering it's the Conference League, I'll take that, as this tournament is extremely unpredictable. And these round of 16 matchups, some of them might look easy on the surface, but there's definitely potential for some upsets here. So we're going to go into every match today, and I'll be sharing with you my thoughts. As always, please hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and let me know your predictions in the comments below. But let's get into it, starting off with the first matchup, which is being pushed up, Lazio versus Alkmaar. Now, this is a perfect example where on the surface there might look like a favorite, but if you've been watching Lazio this season, you know that you can't bake on them necessarily to definitely pull through. Lazio were in that playoff round as they were third in their Europa League group, and they had to come up against Cluj. Obviously, the match was over 2 legs, and they were only able to advance to the round of 16s off of 1 goal. Even their top goal scorer this season, Ciro Immobile, was going through a goal drought, and he was able to finally get on the score sheet against the Romanian club, which set the difference, obviously, but now he might be injured for that first leg. This matchup's coming very soon. I could be wrong on this, but he is expected to return next week. And besides, a lot of Lazio's matches have been cut extremely close. Sometimes they do get the result, though. In fact, their latest win was against first place in the Serie A, Napoli. As you can see, though, it was just a 1-0 win, as their last thrashing was back in January, where they beat AC Milan 4-0. Since then, though, apart from beating Salernitana 2-0, they've been scoring 1 goal max each match. Despite that, Lazio overall this season have still been somewhat pulling through. I mean, they're third in the Serie A, while Alkmaar sit in third in the Eredivisie, which has been an extremely close race to the top. They're only 5 points behind first place Feyenoord. This side has also been a tad bit inconsistent themselves, but sometimes their attack very much pulls through. I mean, the likes of Pavlidis and Odegaard have been fantastic. Their fullbacks like Sugawara and Milos Kerkez press up beautifully. In terms of defensive abilities, though, sometimes this side is lacking, but if they can sharpen up before they face Lazio, they actually have a very solid chance to make a deep run in the Conference League, similar to how Feyenoord did last year. I mean, this side is filled with young, energetic players. They could catch Lazio off guard. It's definitely possible. It's an extremely tough one to call, and I'd say it's a lot more 50-50 than people are making it out to be. I'm well aware that this one could age terribly, as Lazio, on paper, should be one of the favorites to win the Conference League. But I'm going to say that Alkmaar pulled through to the quarterfinals. Despite Lazio getting the results narrowly at times, I think Alkmaar can take advantage of their lack of goal-scoring threat at the moment. I'll say the first leg is a 0-0 draw, but then when Alkmaar play at home, they will win 2-1. First match, I'm already going for an upset, but I truly won't be surprised if Lazio prove me wrong, as yeah, they probably are the favorites here, but I wouldn't sleep on Alkmaar, and Lazio just haven't been convincing enough for me to see them pull through. But best of luck to both clubs regardless. Now let's take a look at Anderlecht versus Villarreal. Anderlecht were the playoff representative, where they had to face Ludogorets in the last round. They advanced with penalties being the difference. To be honest, they haven't been the most convincing this season, even with very experienced players with the likes of Vertonghen in the back. Their defense really has not been great. They have some young, energetic players in there that could make the difference as well. But overall, the squad isn't meshing brilliantly together, and it's going to be tough against Villarreal, even though they haven't been looking as brilliant after Emery's departure. Definitely more inconsistent under Setien. However, this side still has a lot of European experience, as we know. They had a very deep run in the Champions League last time around. They should be able to do the job over a pretty underwhelming Anderlecht. I'm going to say Villarreal are able to do the job over both legs. First one, they grab a 1-0 win. Second leg, they grab a 3-1 win. Let's see if Anderlecht do prove me wrong, but I definitely think Villarreal has what it takes to make it to the quarterfinals. Let's move on now to Sheriff versus Nice. I didn't enjoy doing Partizan dirty in the last prediction video. I did say Sheriff would beat them, and I had faith that they would, as they love to do it against the ex-Yugo clubs. They beat Crvena Zvezda and Dinamo Zagreb in the same Champions League qualifier run, and now they beat Partizan in the playoffs in the Conference League. Despite Partizan grabbing an away win, Sheriff were able to do it in Belgrade. And now it's going to be interesting as they're coming up against another team that was in the same group as Partizan in the Conference League group stage, Nice. And both of these clubs share the same amount of points in Group D. Despite Nice only sitting 7th in Ligue 1 at the moment, they definitely look a bit more dangerous in the attack since the January transfer window. Tiraspol, for example, had a brilliant performance against Monaco where he got 2 goals and 1 assist. Sheriff in European football have obviously told some incredible stories. We could see an upset here. I mean, they've upset Real Madrid in the Champions League last season, the same year Los Blancos won it. But a lot of those players have left. They still have some solid ones, sure, but I do think Nice are the favorites to advance. I'll say Sheriff put off a good fight though, where they grab a 1-1 draw in the first leg. However, Nice clean up in the second. They grab a 3-0 win in France. Could be proven wrong. Maybe that's a bit steep against Sheriff. They put off some good fights, but I'm going to say it ends quite brutally for them at the very end. Best of luck to Sheriff. Prove me wrong. Now moving on to Larnaca versus West Ham. Again, looks like on the surface we have another favorite here, West Ham. Despite them struggling in the Premier League, they still have a fantastic squad backing them up. And of course, they're going to put a lot of focus into this competition. Despite the Premier League struggles, they still grabbed first in their Conference League group. Undefeated as well, with 6 for 6 wins. Definitely not the same electric West Ham side we saw last season, but with those big name players like Declan Rice, Bowen, Lucas Paqueta. I don't want to sleep on Larnaca per se. I mean, they made a really deep run so far, put off some fantastic displays in their very difficult Europa League group. They do seem to be slowing down just a tad bit. I mean, for example, their match against the Dnipro, they barely squeezed through against them, only scoring 1 goal to advance over them. Meanwhile, back in the qualifiers for these European competitions, they beat them by a much heftier scoreline. An upset here is possible, but I do think 16th place in the Premier League West Ham will advance to the quarterfinals in the Conference League. And I'm sorry, Larnaca, but I think they can do it in both legs as well. The first one a bit more narrow, just a 1-0 victory for the Hammers, but in the second leg, I'm saying West Ham grab a 3-1 win over the Cyprian club. Of course, best of luck to Larnaca. Feel free to prove me wrong, but I am going to go with the favorites here on paper. Let's move on now to Gent versus Istanbul. Gent is the first team that's part of that Conference League playoff round where I predicted that they would crash, but they actually advanced. They barely advanced over Karabag, beating them on penalties. Both of them grabbed a narrow 1-0 victory at their home ground, so it's no surprise that Gent advanced due to the fact that they were the home side in the second leg. Of course, shout out to Gent for proving me wrong, but they're sitting at 5th in the Belgian league at the moment. Their Conference League group did impose some challenges, of course, but still one where they shouldn't have really fell short, and they were 1 point in front of 3rd place Molde. Ironically, Istanbul Basaksehir also sit in 5th place in their domestic league, but they had a fantastic display in their Conference League group, grabbing 1st place, tied with points with Fiorentina. So I guess they dodged a bullet going to that playoff round, and now it's going to be hard to kind of assess them in terms of how they're going to come up against other European clubs from all over the world, as now in recent form we only have the domestic league to reference to. Although they did have a few impressive wins here and there, they did have their rough moments this season. In fact, in their last 3 matches in the Turkish league, they were not victorious. This was a while back, but also we can't forget about the fact that they lost to Galatasaray 7-0. Huh, that scoreline's familiar. Basaksehir has some more familiar names, but I wouldn't rule out some of these Gent players. There's definitely a few to watch. One in specific, though, is Hugo Soipers. At the time of this recording, he has 19 goals this season alone. I feel bad. Throughout this video, I feel like I've been ripping on a lot of clubs. A lot of them have been inconsistent throughout the season, so it's really hard to necessarily bank on a winner, and it's no different between these two teams. Both Istanbul and Gent haven't been the most outlandish sides. However, if we're going to take a look at Istanbul's Conference League performances in that group stage run, they scored quite a decent amount of goals. You know, I really won't be surprised if Gent are the ones victorious, but I think I gotta lean towards Istanbul Basaksehir. I'll say in the first leg it finishes in a 1-1 draw, but then Istanbul clean up in the second, grabbing a 3-1 victory. I'm going for a bit of a similar pattern here for many of these predictions, but I think it's safe to go with this one. Could be wrong. Let's see what happens. Now for Basel versus Slovan Bratislava, again, another club which I predicted to get knocked out earlier. I definitely thought Tiraspol would be the ones to advance to the round of 16s, as Basel have been extremely underwhelming in the Swiss Super League. They should be fighting for that top spot. I know they sit at 5th at the moment, but they were at a worse position earlier, and they are closer to 10th place versus 1st place. Meanwhile, Slovan Bratislava should be doing better themselves, but they still have a chance to catch up in their domestic league. They're just 1 point behind 1st place. But I really admire this squad. They have a lot of underrated gems here. such as 2 Georgian players that definitely could contribute for the national team as well. Georgi Chakvedetze has been a great playmaker throughout the season, and Guram Kasha can really hold his experience and leadership in the back line. These sides have already played each other in the Conference League actually, as they were in the same group and got the same amount of points. The first time they met, Slovan Bratislava were able to grab a 2-0 win, and the second time it finished in a 3-3 thriller. The thing about Basel is, although I was ripping on their form earlier this season, it does seem like they're handling the pressure well as of recent. I mean, they haven't been really closing out some games. They picked up 2 matches that finished in a 2-2 draw. That first match against Tiraspol, they lost as well, but they picked themselves up. Basel very much could get the last laugh as they seem to be going through that upward trajectory, but at the same time, Slovan Bratislava is already very familiar with this side. Well, we got to congratulate Basel, of course. I'm not gonna lie, they got pretty lucky to make it this far. There were so many offside goals called for Trabzonspor. I see the last time these two sides faced being pretty much a repetition to this fixture. I think it's gonna be another high-scoring thriller. I will say in the first leg we see a 2-2 draw between the two sides. Then in the second leg, once they play in Slovakia, Slovan Bratislava will grab a 2-1 win against Basel. Of course, Basel could easily prove me wrong. They already have. But the fact that these sides have already faced each other, and Basel, despite looking a tad bit better, still not convincing enough for me. I'm going to say Slovan Bratislava can do it. A lot of fighting grit in this side, like I said, and I think they have what it takes to advance to the quarterfinals. Now moving on to Fiorentina versus Sivasspor. Now Fiorentina, a lot of people doubted this side when they had to face Braga, as in the City A, Fiorentina were not looking convincing whatsoever. Despite that, I still had faith that the side would pull through, as they have been in knockout competitions. In fact, they demolished Braga in the first leg. They beat them 4-0 when they were the away side as well. Then in the second, it was a 3-2 thriller. Before then, they also knocked out Torino in the Coppa Italia. So Fiorentina are a semi-finalist team in that competition. Also, since the Braga encounter, it seems like Fiorentina's confidence has just seemed to boom. They put 3 past Verona straight after they advanced to the round of 16 in the Conference League, and they got a narrow win against AC Milan. Serbian Luka Jovic and Brazilian Arthur Cabral have really picked up their form. Meanwhile, Sivasspor are not looking hot this season. They are in 14th in the Turkish league at the moment. 2 points away from that relegation zone. It's not looking hot. Sure, Sivasspor could pull off an upset. They have been getting some results recently, such as narrowly beating Besiktas, but I think it is a lot safer to bank on Fiorentina at the moment. I think they're going to be able to do it in both legs once again. I think the first leg is going to go very much in their way, 3-0 at home in Italy. But in the second leg fixture, I will say it finishes 2-4. So yeah, Fiorentina wins both times. Might sound a bit too confident on this one, but I truly have a feeling that they can do it. But the final match we're looking at is a very tough one to call. You've got Lech Poznan versus Djurgarden. Poland versus Sweden. Lech Poznan in that playoff round where they beat Bodo Glimt, as I predicted, but they did it in the most narrow fashion. And who scored that game-winning goal in the second leg? I talked about him in the playoff video. Isak. He has 8 direct goal contributions in 8 matches in this Conference League tournament. And he has fantastic numbers in the Polish league as well. This guy is on absolute fire this year. So I made some decent calls this year about Lech Poznan to advance this far. But a team that I definitely slept on was Djurgarden. They finished first in their group. Undefeated. Just 1 draw as well. 5 wins. Djurgarden are obviously going to go into this match confident. Why not? But they are missing one of their key center backs. Ekdal joined Burnley during the January transfer window. The Swedish League in 2023 hasn't started yet, but last season they did finish second. They were such a joy to watch in the Conference League, scoring loads of goals, especially in the second half. Sure, Lech Poznan finished second while Djurgarden finished first in their own group, but they had a group with Villarreal. And with that being said, like I mentioned in the last video, they impressed against Villarreal despite falling short to them. You can make a case about either of these teams. Very tough one to predict. I'm going to lean towards Lech Poznan though. For the vibes maybe. But you know what, Djurgardens, I doubted you guys so hard in the Conference League group stage for absolutely no good reason. So you know what? Feel free to prove me wrong once again. If you're upset what I have to say in this video, just be happy that I'm not about to jinx you. Maybe you could very much impress against Lech Poznan. They barely squeezed through against Bodo, but Bodo Glimt are a very solid team, despite them losing a lot of players from last year. So, I'm going to say Lech Poznan barely do it against Djurgardens. First leg, Djurgardens wins 1-0, away, I know. And then in the second leg, Lech Poznan wins 2-0. I think this side has what it takes to use the tools that work well for them and remain confident. I mean, they are just coming off of a 5-0 win against Lechia Gdansk. So, anything's possible here. I'm going to lean towards the Polish club. But yeah, guys, those are all of my Conference League predictions. Like I already said, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you all for making it to the end. If you haven't already, please hit that like button. Subscribe if you're new. I will be dropping the Euro 2024 qualifier final predictions this week as well. So make sure you stay tuned for that. But yeah, take care. La con noche.